The wrestling business can be brutal, both in the ring and in real life. Some superstars had success at their feet, only to throw it all away. In this video, we're counting down 10 wrestlers who ruined their own careers. Buff Bagwell was one of WCW's most recognisable stars. He had a good look, a bunch of unique charisma, and he was the kind of wrestler that Vince McMahon gravitated towards. Although he'd have to drop the habit that he had in WCW of bringing his mom to work with him. Bagwell was one of the first WCW wrestlers brought in to kick off the Invasion storyline in 2001, but everything went wrong real fast. He was booked in a match against Booker T on Raw under the WCW banner, and it turned out to be a complete disaster. Bagwell's timing was off, and the chemistry with Booker just wasn't there. The fans weren't buying it, and neither was WWF management. And backstage, he got into a fight with Shane Helms that left him with 28 stitches and a concussion, and to make matters worse, Bagwell allegedly had his mom phone in sick for him, so he didn't have to wrestle on a house show. Speaking to Judy Bagwell was the final straw for the WWF's management. This could have been a whole new chapter in Bagwell's career, but in the end, Buff just wasn't the stuff for Vince McMahon. When Velveteen Dream first appeared in NXT, he was unlike anything that wrestling fans had seen before. He was flamboyant and absolutely dripping with charisma. He seemed destined for greatness, as many fans seemed convinced that he was going to become a megastar once he was called up to the main roster. But in 2020, everything fell apart for Patrick Clark Jr. Allegations surfaced of him sending inappropriate messages to minors. Clark denied the accusations, but the damage was done. He was fired in 2021 as part of a mass roster cut, but many people believed that it was the allegations that caused WWE to add him to the list of releases. And Clark's troubles didn't stop after he left the company. He was arrested in August 2022 for battery after a violent altercation at a gym, and then he was arrested again for violating his probation related to a previous drugs charge. After all this, it seems unlikely that WWE or any reputable wrestling company will ever want to hire him again. Perry Saturn made a name for himself in the 90s as one half of the Eliminators. His tag team alongside John Cronus was one of ECW's best ever. In WCW, he was one of the most memorable members of Raven's Flock, and he was a TV champion and a tag team champion during his time there. In the year 2000, he jumped to the WWF alongside Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit. While he didn't have as much singles success as his teammates, he was a reliable performer in the ring, or so the WWF believed. The incident that derailed his career came in 2001 while he was wrestling a jobber named Mike Bell. Saturn was furious when Bell botched a couple of moves, and he responded by viciously attacking him. Saturn threw stiff punches and he slammed Bell into the mat before tossing him out of the ring, almost causing him to land on his head. This outburst didn't sit well with WWF management, and they decided to punish him for the rest of his contract. They gave him a storyline where he became obsessed with a mop and thought that he was in a relationship with it. WWE released him in 2002, and he was never invited back into the company. Mr. Kennedy made his WWE debut in 2005, and he immediately stood out with his unique microphone announcing entrance, and WWE wanted to push him all the way to the top. He got wins over established superstars like Rey Mysterio and Booker T, and he even won the Money in the Bank briefcase. And back then, winning the briefcase almost guaranteed a run with the WWE Championship. But Kennedy's career wasn't ruined by a single event, but a series of problems that piled up over time. First of all, he was riddled with injuries that put him out of action for several months at a time, and whenever WWE seemed ready to pull the trigger on his main event push, another injury would derail his momentum. For example, he had to give up the Money in the Bank briefcase due to a triceps injury. Backstage politics also played a role in his downfall. Randy Orton and John Cena claimed that Kennedy was unsafe in the ring, which caused Vince McMahon to go cold on him. But what really shook McMahon's confidence in Kennedy was when he was implicated in a steroid scandal. His name appeared in a report linking him to a pharmacy that was distributing performance-enhancing drugs. This combination of problems sealed his fate with the company, and by 2009, he was released from his contract. Standing at 6'3" and weighing over 300 pounds, Lars Sullivan was being positioned as WWE's next big thing. There were even discussions about Sullivan getting into feuds with the likes of John Cena and Brock Lesnar, with Vince McMahon keen to establish him as his new monster heel. However, despite the early promise, Sullivan's run would be short-lived. In 2019, offensive comments from Sullivan's past resurfaced, including racist, homophobic and sexist remarks. WWE fined him $100,000 and ordered him to undergo sensitivity training. Then it came out that he'd starred in a gay porn movie. Unsurprisingly, WWE backed off on his big push and he never made it to the main event. He asked for his own release in 2021 after suffering from anxiety issues. As one half of the Rockers, Marty Jannetty was part of one of the most exciting tag teams of the late 80s and early 90s. But no tag team lasts forever. Michaels famously turned heel on his partner and Marty obliged by throwing himself through the barbershop window. And that's where these two men's careers completely diverged. Just weeks after the tag team split up, Marty was arrested for possession of cocaine after an altercation at a nightclub. He was supposed to be getting a big singles push, but the WWF had no choice but to suspend him instead. He returned in late 1992 to feud with Shawn Michaels, but it seemed that his personal life was starting to get out of control. After their match at the Royal Rumble, Marty was fired once again after accusations that he was intoxicated during the match. Vince McMahon was convinced by Curt Hennig to bring Jannetty back, but that only lasted about a year and a half. Jannetty's personal problems started to bleed into his professional life and he became unmanageable, which caused the WWF to cut him loose in 1994. He never got anywhere near the heights of his former tag team partner, as it would be Shawn Michaels who ended up reaching legendary status in the wrestling business. Nailz debuted in the WWF in 1992 as a former convict with a grudge against the Big Boss Man. His career in the WWF would be extremely short-lived, and the turning point came backstage at a WWF TV taping. Nailz, whose real name was Kevin Wacholtz, confronted Vince McMahon over a pay dispute. Wacholtz was unhappy with the amount of money that had been paid, accusing Vince McMahon of stiffing him, and so he stormed into McMahon's office and physically attacked him. He put his hands around McMahon's neck and started to choke him, and then he threw him to the ground before others ran in to break up the fight. You won't be surprised to hear that he got fired shortly after. In the aftermath, Wacholtz filed a wrongful termination lawsuit and even accused McMahon of sexually assaulting him, but the claims were quickly dismissed. Unsurprisingly, his wrestling career never recovered from the incident. Tessa Blanchard is the daughter of wrestling legend Tully Blanchard. She was praised for her wrestling ability, and she was pioneering a comeback for male versus female intergender matches. The peak of this was when she beat Sami Callihan to become the first female Impact World Champion. Around this time, she was getting interest from WWE, who were looking to potentially sign her to a contract. but just as she was about to reach the next level, a series of allegations derailed her career. It was on the eve of her becoming the Impact World Champion that several female wrestlers came forward with serious accusations against her. Allysin Kay accused Blanchard of spitting on La Rosa Negra and using a racial slur during an altercation in Japan in 2017. Other wrestlers, including Chelsea Green and Priscilla Kelly, backed these claims up. They also added their own stories of bullying and mistreatment that they allegedly faced at the hands of Blanchard. Despite her denial of the allegations, the damage was done, and it seems that WWE didn't renew their interest in her either. Joey Ryan stood out as one of the most recognisable faces on the independent wrestling scene thanks to his outrageous and very adult persona. His gimmick was that of a sleazeball, just like something straight out of a 70s porno film, and it made him a viral sensation in the wrestling world. Ryan's character probably wouldn't have been allowed in WWE, but he didn't really need them. He was all over the independent circuit in 2019, and he had a regular job in Impact Wrestling. But in 2020, the career that he was carving out for himself came to an end, because it turned out that Ryan wasn't just a sleazeball in the ring. Over 15 women came forward with allegations of sexual misconduct against him. These accusations range from inappropriate behaviour through to outright sexual assault. Many of the women claimed that Ryan had used his influence to manipulate or pressure them into uncomfortable situations. Ryan went from being a viral sensation on the indie scene to being blackballed by a lot of those same promotions that had made him famous in the first place. Tammy Lynn Sitch, better known as Sunny, was one of the first WWF divas. She was cute, sexy and confident, and for a while she was the Federation's #1 woman. She debuted alongside her real-life boyfriend Chris Candido, and for a while she managed him on TV, but by 1996 she'd become a huge star in her own right, and even started crossing over into the mainstream. She was all over WWF TV at the time, but as her fame grew, so did her personal issues. She started cheating on Candido with various wrestlers backstage, allegedly including Shawn Michaels. That affair became an open secret, and it created a lot of tension backstage. She then developed substance abuse issues, which caused her to miss events, and her behaviour reportedly became unbearable. On top of that, it was reported that Sunny was having backstage problems with new girl Sable. By 1998, her problems became too much for the company to deal with. She was released from her contract, and Sable took her place as the WWF's #1 woman. After leaving wrestling, Sunny's life spiraled out of control. Most recently, she caused a car accident while driving drunk, which killed a 75-year-old man in Florida. As a result, she was sentenced to 17 years in prison in 2023.